Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating concept called ZYRO HIVE. It's a framework that suggests a totally new way for, well, everything in our world to coordinate and work together. And it is radical.
So, to really get why this idea is such a big deal, you first have to look at the world we live in now. Our systems are pretty much all built on a fundamental conflict. Are you an individual, or are you part of the machine? Most of the time, you're not allowed to be both. You have to choose.
And this isn't some small thing, right? This conflict scales up everywhere you look. Does a community get to be its own independent, sovereign group, or does it have to give in to a larger collective? This either-or tension, it's at the very heart of our economies, our governments, and even how we think about our own identities.
Okay, let's start by digging into the core problem here. The framework we're looking at has a great name for it: the tyranny of OR.
This really lays out the battle lines, doesn't it? Our current systems, everything from legal contracts to how corporations are set up, they force everything into a box. You're either sovereign or you're part of the collective. You're either a human or you're part of a non-human system, like an ecosystem, which usually just gets treated like a resource to be exploited. This whole setup creates a world that's just defined by competition and hierarchy.
But what if there was another way? What if we didn't have to choose? This brings us to the core breakthrough of ZYRO HIVE, what they call the AND architecture.
So, instead of forcing that awful OR choice, this architecture is designed for something called ontological completion. Now, I know that sounds super academic, but it's actually a simple and incredibly powerful idea. It's about creating a system where all these different ways of being, sovereign, human, collective, can all coexist and thrive at the same time without anyone having to sacrifice who or what they are. And let's be really clear here. This is not about finding some messy compromise or meeting in the middle. It's about designing an entirely new foundation, a system where these conflicts are just resolved right from the very beginning.
So you're probably asking, okay, how does this actually work in the real world? Great question. Let's break down the 4 key features that make this AND architecture possible. First up is the multi-state participation portal. Think of it like a universal doorway. It's this single, secure layer that lets totally different kinds of entities. We're talking a corporation, an individual person, a community, even an ecosystem like a river, all participate as equals in the very same project.
Second, you have pattern contribution contracts. These are really cool hybrid smart contracts that can actually recognize valuable contributions of data or behavior, things the system calls patterns. So, for example, a community could contribute a cultural resilience pattern, while a river, through sensors, contributes a water health pattern. And for providing this valuable info, they automatically get paid.
Third, there's the nested sovereignty framework. This is the governance model, and it's a real game changer. It allows groups to collaborate on massive projects without losing their own autonomy. So, a tribal nation, for instance, could help build a regional power grid without ever having to give up its own authority or get swallowed up by the larger project.
And finally, an AI named Carly is the conductor of this whole orchestra. It coordinates all those different patterns, it verifies when they all come together to complete a project, which is called a circuit, and then it automatically distributes the value to every single contributor. And maybe most important, it learns from every cycle, constantly optimizing the system for overall health and success, not just for profit.
All right, so let's move on. What does all this mean for the idea of value itself? Well, this approach builds a completely new model for how value is created and shared. It's all about moving from externalities to equity holders.
And this is where it gets really wild. The core idea is that by getting rid of all the waste and conflict of the old OR system, you can multiply value like crazy. The source material suggests a single dollar could become up to 64 times more effective, all because it's working in a closed-loop system that actually solves problems directly, instead of just kicking the can down the road and creating new ones.
And you can really see the practical shift here in this table. A sovereign entity is no longer a competitor, it's an equal peer, a co-owner. A human isn't just a unit of labor anymore, but an equity-holding pattern agent. And a non-human entity like a river, it goes from being a resource to a partner with actual standing. Everything that used to be an external cost is now an internal equity-holding partner.
Let's make this super concrete with an example. So imagine a utility company needs an upgrade. Instead of fighting with everyone, it co-owns a completion circuit with a local tribal nation.
Then the community and residents contribute patterns, like energy-saving behaviors. The local watershed contributes real-time water health data from its sensors. And when the upgrade is done, boom, everyone who contributed gets a dividend. Simple as that.
Okay, so let's zoom out. What's the grand vision? What happens when this way of coordinating scales up? What's the ultimate outcome?
At its very heart, what we're talking about is a revolution in how we make agreements. We move away from those old adversarial zero-sum contracts, the I win, you lose kind that lawyers love, and we move towards collaborative, positive-sum agreements that are verified by cryptography and are all about completing a shared goal. It's a huge shift from value capture to value completion.
The ultimate goal here is a state of, get this, planetary coherence. In a system where everything can participate, it becomes impossible to externalize your costs. You can't pollute the river because the river is now your equity partner. Suddenly, economic coordination starts to heal the system instead of harming it, and value multiplies instead of just leaking out all over the place.
I love this quote from the source material because it just nails the vision. This isn't about a small tweak or a minor improvement, it's about a fundamental reimagining of what an economy can even be. One where every single part can exist as itself, and by doing so, it strengthens the whole.
So really, the final takeaway is an invitation. It's a question that challenges all of us to think differently. Can we actually design a world where we don't have to choose between our own autonomy and our ability to build amazing things together? This framework argues, pretty powerfully, that the answer is yes.